Most gardens are built for a smooth year. That is the wrong target. Real life is not smooth. Some years are hot and dry. Some years are cold and sloppy. Some years bring bad knees, bad timing, or a grocery bill that keeps climbing. A resilient garden does not panic. It keeps feeding you. It stores food underground. It comes back after winter. It climbs instead of sprawling. It gives you leaves, roots, shoots, fruit, or seed. That is what I want for you. If you have ever watched a tomato patch collapse from one disease, you already know the lesson. One crop can fail fast. A stronger garden spreads the risk. 15 different crops fail slower or not at all. You do not need all 15 in your yard next year. You only need 2 or 3 that fit your climate, your space, and your back. Learn those well, then widen out. Now, let me show you the kinds of plants I trust when I want food that does not need coddling. I always start with the crops that practically store themselves in the soil. Jerusalem artichokes are at the top of that list. Some people call them sunchokes. They are not artichokes, and they are not from Jerusalem. They are a tall sunflower relative that makes knobby tubers underground. That underground storage is the whole point. You can leave them in the ground after frost. Then dig only what you need when the soil is workable. In a hard year, that means your pantry is already in place. You are not canning every weekend. You are not hauling everything into a freezer. You are just stepping outside and pulling dinner from the dirt. They work best in colder and moderate zones, and they usually come back from one missed tuber. That is the upside and the warning. They multiply. They are generous. They are also a little rude if you let them roam. So give them a corner. Give them an edge. Better yet, give them a barrier. If your back is not what it used to be, this is still a fair crop. You do not have to lift every tuber at once. Harvest a few, leave the rest. The soil keeps them cool, and the flavor often gets better after frost. That is the kind of crop I respect. It does not ask for drama. It just keeps showing up. Walking onions are another one of those crops. They look odd the first time you see them, and then they make perfect sense. Instead of only growing little bulbs in the soil, they make tiny bulbs on top of the stalks. Those little top bulbs bend the stalk down. They land in the soil. Then they root. Then they make another plant. That is why people say they walk across the garden. You get green tops in spring. You get bulbs later. You get a crop that keeps renewing itself without much help from you. If I had to hand a child one plant and say, "Watch how life repeats itself," this would be near the top of my list. They are useful in colder zones and forgiving in poorer soil. They are also easy on the knees. You are not replanting every year. You are not babysitting seedlings indoors. You are just trimming, pulling, and letting a few top bulbs do the work for you. My grandmother liked anything that came back without begging for attention. She would have loved walking onions. The mistake most people make is harvesting every top bulb too neatly. Leave some. Let the plant reseed itself. That is how you build a colony instead of a one-time crop. If you have shade, rough soil, or a yard corner that never looks great, this kind of plant helps you stop wasting that space. Now let's talk about food that grows on wood instead of in soil. Oyster mushrooms are one of the smartest survival crops you can grow. They are fast, they are productive, and they turn waste into food. You can grow them on logs, straw, cardboard, or other clean organic material. That means a pile of yard debris can become a meal. If you have a damp, shaded area, they can do very well there. If you have a dry, open yard, you can still make them work with a little watering. This is one of the best stand-up crops in the whole group. You are not kneeling in rows. You are not fighting weeds between plants. You are setting up a system, then letting it work. The important part is to start with known oyster mushroom spawn from a trusted source. Do not guess with wild mushrooms. This is not the place for guesswork. Once they begin to fruit, they can produce fast, sometimes very fast. That matters when you want food with a short turnaround. You inoculate the material, keep it moist, and wait for the white threads to run through it. Then the mushrooms appear like a small miracle. The cost can be almost nothing if you already have logs or cardboard. The budget version is hard to beat. Clean waste plus good spawn can become dinner. If the idea of growing food without a bed or a row sounds strange, Good. Strange is often where resilience begins. Now we move to a crop that gives you both greens and grain. Amaranth is one of the most useful old crops on Earth. It grows fast in heat. It does not panic when the weather turns rough, and it gives you 2 meals from one plant. You can eat the young leaves like spinach. Then, later, you can let some plants set seed and harvest the grain. That double purpose is why it belongs in a hard times garden. The biggest mistake is treating it like a delicate salad green. It is not that. It likes warm soil. It likes sun. It likes room to stand up and do its thing. In colder zones, wait until after the frost danger is gone and the soil has warmed. In warmer zones, you can keep it going much longer. If your summer heat crushes lettuce, amaranth keeps going. The leaves are tender when young. The seed heads dry on the stalk and rattle when they are ready. That makes harvest easy. You do not need fancy tools. You clip, dry, and thresh. Here is the part that surprises people. If you let a few seed heads mature and fall, amaranth can self-seed. That means it may come back for you next year. A crop that feeds you now and helps seed the next season is worth its space. Ground cherries are another plant people ignore until they taste one. Then they remember them. These are little husked fruits, wrapped like tiny paper lanterns. They are sweet, they are tangy, and they usually do much better than beginners expect. They are a close cousin of tomatoes, but they are far less fussy. They tolerate more neglect. They often self-seed once they get established, and they can quietly become a reliable patch in the garden. The fruit drops when it is ready. That is important. You do not have to baby every fruit on the vine. You just gather what falls. That makes them easier for busy gardeners and easier for older gardeners too. The mistake is planting them and expecting neat behavior. They are not neat. They are productive. Give them full sun and decent drainage. Mulch lightly so fallen fruit stays clean. In warmer zones, they behave like a dependable annual. In a good spot, they keep coming back from dropped seed. If you want a snack crop that does not demand the care of a tomato, this is a smart one to test. Now let's get to a root crop that feels old-fashioned in the best way. Scorzonera is also called black salsify. It is not a common grocery store plant, which is part of why I like it. The roots can stay in the ground, and they often taste better after frost. That means the plant stores itself where it grew. You do not need a root cellar to make it useful. You do not need to dig all of it at once. You can pull a few roots when you need them and leave the rest protected in the soil. The flavor is mild and a little fancy. Some people compare it to oysters or artichokes. I compare it to a root crop that acts like it knows winter is coming. It likes deep, loose soil. That is the main trick. If your soil is hard and rocky, the roots may fork. If you can loosen the ground first, you get much better harvests. The unexpected part is how well it handles storage in place. A thick mulch can help in colder weather. In many yards, that is all the storage system you need. This is a good crop for anyone who wants food hidden in the ground, waiting on their schedule instead of the other way around. If you want the easiest green you are probably not growing, look at purslane. Most people pull it. I would rather eat it. Purslane is a heat-loving volunteer that laughs at dry weather. It has thick stems and shiny little leaves. It grows where lettuce gives up. It grows where the soil is tired. It grows when summer gets brutal. That makes it valuable. You can harvest the young stems and leaves and use them fresh. They have a crisp texture and a mild tang. They are useful in salads, in cooked greens, or mixed with other vegetables. They are also one of the best free foods for hot weather. The biggest mistake is waiting too long. Older purslane can get tough. Pick it young and keep clipping the tender tips. This is also a crop that does not mind bad timing. If you forget to water, it may still survive. If you have a crack in a driveway, a path edge, or a neglected bed, purslane may show up on its own. That is why I call it a resilience plant. It grows when you do not have the energy to be perfect. A lot of gardeners chase beauty. I chase calories and ease. Purslane gives both, especially when the heat is on. Now let's talk about a perennial green that earns its keep year after year. Perennial kale is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of sowing new kale every spring, you keep harvesting from a plant that returns. That changes the whole rhythm of the garden. You are not starting over. You are maintaining. You are not scrambling for seedlings. You are cutting fresh leaves from a plant that already knows your soil, your weather, and your schedule. Perennial kale is best in milder climates, though it can be grown in colder places with some protection and a good sheltered spot. It usually likes a little more kindness than the wild weeds, but far less than standard annual vegetables. The trick is to harvest often, without stripping it bare. Take the young leaves and side shoots. Let the plant keep enough leaf mass to stay strong. If your knees complain about constant replanting, this is a friendly crop. If your spring is busy, it helps there too. The mistake is treating it like a cut flower. Don't scalp it. Harvest lightly and often. A good perennial kale patch feels like garden insurance. It is there in spring. It is there when other crops are slow. It keeps giving when your annual beds are empty. That is worth space. Turkish rocket is another perennial green, and it has a more aggressive personality. This one gives you spicy, peppery leaves. It also gives you early spring growth and a long season of harvest. In a cold climate, it can wake up fast. In a poor patch, it often outperforms fussy plants. In a neglected border, it may become the best thing you have. It is part of the Brassica family, which means it has that mustard-like bite. The leaves can be cooked or used young in salad mixes. The flowers are bright and useful too. The warning is simple. It can spread. Not as wildly as Jerusalem artichokes, but enough that you should know where it lives. So put it where you want a tough perennial border. Let it anchor a side bed. Use it as a green fence line if you like. The budget version is easy here, because once it is established, it asks for very little. My advice is to cut young leaves often. That keeps the plant tender and productive. If you wait too long, the leaves can turn stronger in flavor. A tough green that wakes up early and keeps going late is never a bad thing to have around. Now for one of the stranger crops on the list. Mashua is a South American tuber crop that deserves a lot more attention. It grows vines, it forms tubers, and it has a reputation for being hardy and productive. That matters when you want food with weight behind it. This is not a crop that just gives you a handful of salad greens. It can give you real underground food. The leaves and flowers are also edible in many contexts, which adds to the value. More than one harvest from one plant is always a good sign. It is usually planted from tubers after frost danger has passed. The vines will climb if you give them room. By late season, the plant can make a lot of tubers underground. The mistake most people make is expecting a neat garden vegetable. Mashua is more like a living system. It wants space and a trellis or support. It wants to sprawl upward, not stay tidy. In cooler and mild climates, it can do especially well. In many places, gardeners treat it as a seasonal crop and lift the tubers before hard frost. That is a smart move in cold zones. If you want a crop that combines unusual food value with hardiness, Mashua belongs on your short list. Sea kale is a plant most people have never tasted, and that is a shame. It is a perennial coastal plant with edible spring shoots. Those shoots are the prize. You blanch them by covering the crown so the new growth stays tender and pale. That gives you a spear-like harvest in early spring. It is one of the few crops that can make the hungry part of spring feel generous. Later, the plant also makes broadleaves. So it is not just a one-shot crop. It gives you an early luxury, then a sturdy, leafy presence after that. Sea kale likes drainage and patience. It does not need to be fussed over all summer. It needs a good site and some understanding. The common mistake is planting it and then forgetting the blanching step. If you want those tender shoots, cover the plant when the new growth begins. That is what gives you the best texture. This is a good crop for cool climates, especially where spring comes slowly. It can turn a cold corner of the yard into a very useful edible patch. I like crops that make you feel rich before the rest of the garden wakes up. Sea kale does that. Now let's move to a vine that does not mind heat. Malabar spinach is not true spinach. That matters. True spinach bolts in heat. Malabar spinach does the opposite. It loves heat. That alone makes it valuable in many backyards. It is a climbing vine, which means it saves ground space. You can train it up a trellis, a fence, or even a sturdy support near the side of a garden bed. That makes it useful in small spaces and easier for anyone who does not want to stoop over a low patch. The leaves are thick and glossy. They can be used cooked or fresh, depending on your taste. The plant grows best when summer is hot and the sun is strong. The mistake is treating it like spring spinach. It is not that. Sow it when warmth is real. Give it support. Pick often, and it keeps climbing. In warm zones, it may behave almost like a perennial. In colder places, most gardeners grow it as a seasonal vine. Either way, it gives you leafy food when many greens are fading. If you have a fence and a hot summer, this crop can turn vertical space into dinner. Oca is one of the most colorful tuber crops you can grow. It comes from the Andes, and it can produce bright little tubers in yellow, pink, red, and even striped forms. It is a good reminder that food can be useful and beautiful at the same time. The thing to know is that oca likes a long, cool finish. You plant it after frost danger passes. Then, as the days shorten, the tubers begin to swell. In many places, they taste best after frost. That means timing matters. The mistake is rushing it into cold soil too early or expecting it to behave like a potato. It is not a potato. It wants a different rhythm. In cooler climates, it can do very well. In warmer areas, it may struggle to make the kind of tubers you want. So this is one to test, not one to bet the whole garden on. The interesting part is that, with the right conditions, it can be a real storage crop. The tubers hold food underground. You harvest when ready, and you have a pile of color in your hand. That is a fine reward for a backyard experiment. Good King Henry is an old European green that most modern gardeners forgot. That is a mistake. This plant likes partial shade. It handles a little neglect. It comes back year after year, and it gives you edible shoots and leaves that can stand in for spinach or asparagus in the kitchen. That is a powerful combination. A lot of yards have shade that gets wasted. Under a fence line, beside a shed, or on the north side of a bed, people often plant nothing but mulch and wishful thinking. Good King Henry can turn some of that shade into food. The shoots are best young. The leaves are useful too. Harvest them lightly so the plant keeps coming back strong. The main mistake is over-sun and over-harvest. Give it a fair home. Pick in moderation. Let the plant mature. My favorite thing about this crop is that it rewards the patient gardener. It does not shout. It just quietly becomes useful. If you have a shady corner and you want one more source of greens, this is a smart one to know. Now for a plant that many people know as ornamental, but not as food. Daylilies are tougher than they get credit for. They make clumps that can spread. They tolerate rough conditions, and several parts of the plant are edible when handled properly. The flower buds and flowers are the easiest places to start. They can be cooked or used in simple dishes. The young shoots are also used in some kitchens. Some gardeners even use the tubers, though I like to be careful and only rely on plants I can identify with certainty. That caution matters. There are a lot of lookalikes in the world of plants, and I never want anyone guessing with food. So know exactly what you have before you harvest. Once you know the plant is a true daylily, it becomes a useful, edible landscape crop. The bigger point is resilience. Daylilies handle drought, poor soil, and ordinary neglect. That is why they show up in so many old homesteads and old yards. The mistake is leaving them only ornamental. They can do more, a lot more. If you want food from the edge of the garden, from the flower bed, from the places other crops ignore, daylilies can help. Now let me pull these threads together. What all 15 of these crops have in common is simple. They do not depend on one perfect season. They do not depend on a weekly rescue mission from you. They do not all need fresh transplants every spring. Some of them store themselves underground. Some come back from a root crown. Some spread on their own. Some climb instead of sprawl. Some give you leaves in heat. Some give you roots after frost. Some give you grain after the leaves are gone. That is a real food system. If you live in the Midwest or anywhere with weather that refuses to behave, that matters. If your back is not what it used to be, that matters too. If money is tight, it matters even more. And here is the part I want you to remember. A resilient garden is not the one with the fanciest plants. It is the one that still feeds you when you are tired. If I were starting this from scratch, I would choose one underground crop, one leafy perennial, and one self-seeding annual. Maybe Jerusalem artichokes, maybe walking onions, maybe good King Henry, or maybe purslane, ground cherries, and perennial kale if your climate favors them. You do not need to plant everything this year. You only need to test a few unusual crops that fit your yard. Do that, and your garden starts to feel different. The fence line holds food. The shady corner holds food. The soil itself holds food. Even after frost, there are roots waiting. Even in heat, there are greens waiting. Even when life gets messy, there is something out there you can still harvest. That is the kind of garden I trust. And that is the kind of garden I want you building, one tough crop at a time.